Hey, welcome to God's Love for the Unlovable. Dr. Bill Sinyard here. Thanks for watching the show. Pass it on to others, men and women who want to become who they were designed to be by God, right? Meant to be. Here's the question. What do women want? You know, we do not become whole, women. You do not become whole through legislation. It helps, but it's not what you're really looking for. You do not become whole by just muscling through your insecurities or denying them. Even counseling, as good as it is, has limitations of what it can do. Women, you want the same thing as men want: significance, security, and belonging. Think about it. But nothing has hurt you more than you're searching for significance, security, and belonging. So the goal of this show is not just to teach, but to help transform you, let you reach your goals. We're lifting up the name of God, proclaiming His love for the unlovely, the unlovable, and the unloved. Yeah? All right. If you've been following us, you know we're on movement 3 of the 7-movement Song of Songs. Some things don't change. The queen, the bride, is alone again when we find her, when the king finds her. She's longing for something. She's not even sure what that something is. Someone called it a nagging murmur of discontent, could be. I mean, do you know what it is? I mean, sure, you get it, right? She thinks she knows, but when the king arrives, her reactionary behavior kicks in, a subconscious, she blows it. More shame, more sense of failure, more reactionary behavior, and the cycle begins. Hey, make sure that you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks ahead of time. That act may just encourage someone else to check it out. And you'll become a co-conspirator to helping us get the word out about God's love for the unlovable, the unloved, and the unlovely. Yeah? Thanks ahead of time. Welcome to God's love for the unlovable. The New York Times back in May of 1998 did a profile of Francesca Woodman, a very talented female photographer who tragically committed suicide at the age of 21. The author was asking the question whether there were some signs or some clues in her work or behavior that she was so depressed to the point of suicide. I mean, some art observers argued that there were clues. She was immensely talented. Some said brilliant, great future. She was really kind of the start of a new artistic movement in photography, and then boom, shocking the art world. No one saw it coming. So how did so many people know her and yet not know her? The photographs give us a bit of a clue. They are profoundly emotional. One person wrote in a trapped kind of way, almost inviting the viewer to help find her. Are you with me? Her face is often blurred or looking away or reflecting in a mirror or simply not even in the frame. On the rare occasion that she photographed her face, she seemed distant or blurry. In a double portrait with a man, for instance, half of her face disappears in the shadow. So do her photographs chronicle a death foretold, a death wish? Well, not in the sense that she plays with any imagery of death. I mean, not really, but perhaps so in the fragility of her self-image, in the innocence that disguises the sexuality of her poses, and the way she pushes herself to the limit, seemingly oblivious to the dangers involved. Close quote. Well, I'm going to use Francesca today as a metaphor for the average woman. I mean, you know, on a scale of 0 to 10, she might be a 10, and the average woman today in the United States and Canada may be a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, but we're on that scale. The anxiety levels are so high. Suicide ideation is up. Loneliness is up. We're on that scale, right? Photographs of us will be a little bit blurry. So the average woman today is hungering for something, a relationship that's mutual, that has equality, that's lasting, that's empowering, unconditional love without strings from someone who you respect, who respects you, who adores you as you are, who has your back no matter what, right? Who would invest in you, who thinks that you can change the world. That's what I want too. And so Woman, you spend a great deal of time and energy looking for that. You're restless and anxious and dissatisfied, frustrated. You're a pushed person, pushing yourself to the limit, seemingly oblivious to the dangers involved. But hear the good news of the Bible. The great lover King, that fantastic God who created us all, has sought you out. If you're a Christian, he's found you. And he bids you to come to him, to trust him, to be loved by him as you are. He thinks you can change the world. He's got your back. Sometimes, though, it just doesn't feel like it. That's where the king finds the queen. I'm writing a book on overlooked Old Testament women. It's going to be a fascinating book. I'm about halfway through. Probably most of the women you've never heard of. It's stunning to see how God pursues and raises up those women in what they lived in. They lived in a highly sexist, patriarchal society. I mean, really, he does that, right? The patriarchal society today, he can handle. And you and I need that. Christianity is about a living, breathing, ever-present, dynamic relationship with the intimate, vulnerable, glorious, holy God of the universe. Vulnerable, I said it. It's simple. It's profound and so dangerous, meaning it's not going to leave you as you are. And it's so wonderful to enter in is straightforward, very intuitive. In fact, our hope today and throughout this series in the Song of Songs is that the path of commitment, a covenant, would be demystified. The third and its parallel fifth movement are all about my struggle, your struggle to find worth, identity, relational sexuality, self-esteem, where I can try to find it and where I most often fail. If we were to put the third and the fifth movements to music, they would be the blues, maybe, or heavy metal. The tone abruptly shifts from the rapturous love and rest of movement 2 to a troubled, dark night of the soul. So listen to the conciseness, the compacted aspect of this poetry. Chapter 3, verse 1. The queen says, all night long on my bed I looked. The Hebrew is bakash, from the one my heart loves. I looked, bakash, for him, but I did not find him, matzah. You see the searching and the finding? So I will get up now and go about the city. Through its streets and squares I will search, bakash, for the one my heart loves. So I looked, bakash, for him, but did not find him, matzah. The watchmen found matzah me as they made their rounds in the city. Have you seen the one my heart loves? Scarcely had I passed them when I found matzah, the one my heart loves. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him to my mother's house, to the room of the one who conceived me. Well, here the poet very brilliantly has bakash, looking 4 times, completely balanced by matzah, 4 times, and unlike the previous 2 movements, this time she desires to actually be with the king. She starts off with this desire. But clearly, the readers can see that her desire is a bit dysfunctional, right? It's self-focused, it's desperate, it's riddled with insecurities. It's just not healthy. So it's the right step, it's a desire. She doesn't have the lattice anymore, and yet, you know, she's got wounding still. So from her point of view, he is nowhere to be found. And however, once again, we the readers get it that he never left her. He's right there. He's never stopped loving her. He's embracing her. That's the image in the poetry, right? Then this is us and God. The poem is an inclusio with both the first and the last scene in an intimate, vulnerable bedroom context. The tension of her being alone and her lover strangely absent has been resolved again. And remember, these movements are from the queen's perspective. Yep. So here is my interpretive translation. The horrible dream is back. Night after night, I was alone, frantically looking for my king. I felt abandoned. Again, my greatest fear. So desperate was I that I got out of bed, put on my robes and sandals, and ran to the all-familiar city. What a sight it must have been, the queen urgently running up and down the dark, shadowed alleyways, in and out of the raucous bars and nightclubs. I looked, but oh my heart, I looked, he was nowhere to be found. So you get it, right? This is an internal, emotional, spiritual, dark night of the soul. Our queen feels terror. I think that's the right word. Fear of abandonment, fear of being a nothing, fear of being left alone, of being betrayed. Well, researchers seem to back this reaction up. She's not crazy, pretty normal, fallen humanity. We should all be able to relate to her. When you step on a sharp rock, a very fast and powerful signal is sent to your DACC up in your brain, and your DACC says, ouch. And it shifts all of your brain's attention, resources on doing something to remove the pain. And researchers have discovered that the very same thing happens with emotional pain. Think breakup or loss of a loved one or some other emotional trauma, like the queen feeling abandoned by the king. Her DACC says, ouch, and her brain becomes obsessive compulsive to relieve the pain, her pain, loneliness. And so she runs to the city, the absolute last place to find the king. And for those who are chronically lonely, get this, your white blood cells seem to be stuck in a state of fear, which leads to serious issues. One leading researcher said, quote, social isolation is far and away the strongest social risk factor out there. Isn't that interesting? John Chiappo agrees the level of toxicity from loneliness is stunning. Here's another quote. Think of it like this. Loneliness creates a hunger in the brain, and our brain signals deep dissatisfaction. We become restless, irritable, and impulsive, right? That's what the queen is doing. If we don't have the ability to connect socially, we are so ravenous for our social neurochemistry to be rebalanced, we're likely to seek relief from anywhere. And if that anywhere is opioid painkillers or heroin, it's going to be a heat-seeking missile for our social reward system. Is it any wonder people in today's world are becoming addicted so easily? That's Rachel Wertzman. Some of us believe that it's no coincidence that the rise of loneliness in the United States coincides with the rise in opiate use. If you feel lonely, take 2 Advil, but you'll become addicted to the Advil. And remember, this is in the shadow of a new, powerful experience of the king's love just a few verses before. Christian. All right, but I'm now going to suggest that more is at play than just loneliness. As we look at this woman, I think she really is a study of humankind. Our prefrontal cortices is supposed to be that calming, reasonable place where the question, is that such a good idea, is asked. The prefrontal cortex is not online fully until we're in our early 20s. So we said that the queen could be 14, 15, 16. So that could be part of it, affecting her insanity, if you will. I'm using that word too loosely. Her over-the-topness, right? She's not being reasonable here. She's running to the city, right? So I'm not judging her. A lot of it makes sense. It's not all her fault. But I suspect there is more at play. Based upon what we know of her, her own testimony, I'm going to say that she has an addictive personality. Or at least this stage in the poem, she lacks the capacity to emotionally self-regulate. So she needs something else, something external, a relationship, a kiss, or whatever, some self-medication to soothe her and comfort her. And so she runs to the city. We now know that no one is born with the ability to emotionally self-regulate. Infants are completely dependent upon their parents to regulate their physical and psychological states, their emotional states. Imagine an infant all alone on the floor, on the rug, crying at the top of her lungs. She may be wet or hungry or afraid or scared. She's feeling abandoned. She can't put words to it, of course, but she's crying. Her DACC is fully there, and it's saying, release the beast, the fight, flight, freeze chemicals, cortisol. And so the child's in a fear cycle, and so they cry out. They fight, or they could shut down and freeze. But they need comforting, right? They can't self-soothe. It's as if they're saying, is there anyone there for me? And matter of fact, some researchers think that's exactly what their brain is saying. So a parent or caregiver must come, put their face right in front of the child and comfort them. You know, oh baby, I hear you. It's all right, I'm here. They use soft, lilting tones. They hold the baby. They rub her arms and her back until the baby calms down. Infancy is a borrowed ability to emotionally regulate. Parents, researchers now know that if parent and caregivers do this attuning that I just described, this psychical connection with a child, 1 out of 3 interactions, that's all, not 3 out of 3, 1 out of 3, 30%, all things equal, the child will enter the next stage of life secure. That, says researchers, is good enough. That's where we got the title for our free online program for Christian parents of teens and tweens called Good Enough Parent. Free, right? 30% is doable, parent. You can do this, 1 out of 3. And we can show you how. We give you tips, particularly for parents of teens and tweens, but we talk about infancy as well. Go to the landing page, watch the short intro video, goodenoughparent.online. Goodenoughparent, one word, .online. We will send you free, 15 free, short, accessible, really sophisticated, but relevant parental tips, 1 a day for 15 days. Free. Participants found that they have understood their teens 46% better as a result of the program. That's a win. I also did a recent YouTube video on parenting infants and teens on my YouTube channel at Dr. Bill Sinyard. Check it out. It's called Parenting in These Crazy Times. Infants who do not get that kind of care may never learn to emotionally self-regulate. Secure children are stronger in emotional regulation than our children who were in insecure relationships or experienced that, in which their parents may have been more dismissive or punitive or critical of the child's emotional expressions. You know, stop crying. And even into adolescence and adulthood, they must rely on some external support to soothe their anxiety. And that can be tough in relationships with humans and with God. Addiction expert Gabor Mate, in his amazing book In the Realm of the Hungry Ghost, speaks about the addicts that he served, the chronic addicts on the streets of East Vancouver, British Columbia. Here's what he says. They just cannot make themselves feel okay without such supports, whether they be chemicals or food or excessive need for attention, approval, or love, or they seek to make their lives exciting by engaging in activities that trigger elation or sense of risk. A person with inadequate self-regulation becomes dependent on outside things to lift his mood and even to calm himself if he experiences too much undirected internal energy. Doesn't that describe the Queen a little bit? I mean, I'm just tossing it out there, right? I mean, I can't prove it, but I think she has a bit of an addictive personality. And look, we all, again, scale 0 to 10, we all suffer from this. So when the king finds her, or finds you, the Queen seems to lack emotional self-regulation and impulse control. We'll see her change throughout the movements. The key trait of the addictive-prone personality is a poor hold over sudden feelings and urges and desires. They pop off, right? So whatever the Queen is feeling at the moment tends to define her view of the world and is going to control her actions, and maybe you too. No judgment, right? We all come from different contexts. So the Queen lacks differentiation. What is that? It's the capacity to hold on to ourselves while interacting with others. The poorly differentiated person is easily overwhelmed by his or her emotions, absorbs anxiety from others, and generates considerable anxiety within him or herself. That's Gabor Mate again. Meaning, they're prone to codependency. So the Queen can experience the love of the great king in one moment, and then the next day trigger and just discount the experience. The king's love has not finished its wonderful work yet, but it is also not holding back or keeping score or despising her. God's love heals. God just keeps pursuing people like the Queen, people like you, people like me. It's part of the gospel. Mate shares, some of my addicted patients functioned reasonably well until, say, their marriages fell apart, and then they spiraled rapidly into substance use. Even in the downtown East Side, their moods hit rock bottom or soar according to how they are doing with their current partners. They feel hurt easily and are quick to believe they are being rejected. And their level of drug use often hinges on what happens in their relationships. When one relationship ends, they may immediately plunge into another. They are often unable to engage in a process of recovery because their partner is unwilling to join them. They see the relationship as being more important than their own healthy self. Poor differentiation also keeps people in destructive relationships, which themselves take on an addictive quality. So at this point, from the queen's point of view, the relationship seems a bit toxic, right? She's codependent. She's not a queen yet. She's not an equal partner, and that's coming. And the king's going to keep loving her, and his love's going to transform her and you and me. Not perfectly this side of heaven, but it should be noticeable. That's what we're longing for. Remember, what do women want? What do men want? This. Well, the queen has many traits of an addictive personality. It's true for those with eating disorders, self-cutters, gambling addicts, sex, porn addicts. She has poor self-regulation, lack of basic differentiation, lack of a healthy sense of self, a sense of deficient emptiness and impaired impulse control. So what can she do? Right? That's where the king finds her, and he loves her. It's good news. There's healing. And from a neuroscientific point of view, brain rewiring in the experiential arms of the great lover king. That's what his love does. So here's what we're learning. Good news for lonely people, particularly chronically lonely people. Yep. Those who struggle to emotionally self-regulate. Those who might be addictive prone. We have got some really good news. The presence of the king's perfect love is both the cure and the power that even further exposes her deep needs. So cure and exposure. And by the way, remember, poetically picture that she is still in his arms. His love is healing her, but emotionally she checks out. She runs to the city, just like you and I. Even when we're riddled with anxieties and worries and insecurities and frustrations, we're still in his arms. We still have the Holy Spirit in our inner being. He's healing us. But somehow our brain has checked out. We're not experiencing it. So listen, remember the simple and cluttered gospel twice a day, 45 days. Say it verbally, say it aloud, say it word for word. Don't think just because you know the simple and cluttered gospel, oh, I've heard Dr. Bill talk about that. Don't believe that just because you know it, that it's doing something in your midbrain, doing it any good unless you're saying it twice a day. More when you're in this kind of cycle. You with me? The motif used by the poet is a nightmarish darkness. There's fears in the night and questions that are being asked in our brains, questions and uncertainties. Will she ever know love again? Is the king faithful? Did he really love her after all? Is he now loving someone else? Is she abandoned? All of the past baggage just rises to the surface. Maybe my brothers are right. Maybe the daughters of Jerusalem were right. What a fool I am to think I was the queen. Where's the lattice when I need it? You remember the two core subconscious questions that we're all asking. Is there someone out there who really has my back, that I can really trust? Am I really lovable by anyone, but particularly by God? Well, at least this time, there's been a change. She does something. There's no lattice, right? In the last movement, she was trapped. That lattice, here she's actually exercising some freedom. She blows it, but she's moving. There is a change in the wind initiated by the king's love. And in the poetry, there's a contrast presented by the city and the garden. The city, we'll talk some about that, is cold and lifeless. It offers no intimacy, no healing. It's a very dangerous place for the queen. The exterior packaging, the veneer looks very good. Its advertising may look enticing, but it's just spin. It's a facade. There's no depth, no life. It's the anti-great lover king. It's always winter in the city. On the other hand, the garden is where the luxurious life dwells. It's where the great lover king gives himself to her, and to create that self place where she can reciprocate. This is where they can be alone and intimate. Her senses become alive by the colors and tastes and fragrance. She becomes so human in the highest sense, for a moment anyway. But like my relationship with God, we choose to enter into it and choose to leave our lattices and trust God to look up into his gaze again over and over. So what is it that gets into her head to look for the great lover king in the city? It's counterproductive. See, on the one hand, to her credit, she's longing after the great lover king, but on the other hand, she foolishly and irrationally goes the wrong direction. At great personal danger. Why go to the city? Well, maybe you've got this, it's because that's where she's always gone for love and worth, to find soothing, to attempt to medicate her low self-esteem. This is the gaze that she has habitually used to measure her value and purpose. It's habitual, it's reactionary, it's fear-driven, largely subconscious place where, I don't know, 24/7 throughout her entire life. It has been the conditional city that has enticed her and quote-unquote loved her. And the city does respond favorably, at least temporarily, to the attractive, the young, the connected, the wealthy, the powerful, at least for a time. And honestly, apart from the presence of a great lover king who loves people like the queen as she is, what little identity there is in the world got to be squeezed out of the cold streets of the city. And to her credit, she's thorough. She looks up one side and down the other, and surprise, surprise, no king. Well, we'll pick it up there next time. And we're also next time going to read the third movement from my book, The Novella. And I know you'll enjoy that. Hey, let us know if you're getting it. We love hearing from people. Bill@gospel-app.com. And do us a favor, help us get the word out about this love of God for unlovable. First, subscribe to our channel. This might be just the thing for someone who's trying to check things out. Thanks for coming alongside of us. And don't forget the Good Enough Parent program is totally free. 15 parental tips, biblical, sophisticated and accessible, all online, free. It could help you if you're a parent of teen and tweens. I mean, do you want to understand why Johnny explodes when you tell him to eat his broccoli? Or Janelle tripping when you say she can't go to a friend's house tonight? By the way, I'm taking a break on my book on the Song of Songs. I'm writing a book on overlooked, underappreciated biblical women of the Old Testament. Oh my goodness, it's so much fun. Very eye-opening stuff you've never heard. If you want to know when it comes out, get on a mailing list. Bill@gospel-app.com. I'm about halfway through. Yeah? Take heart, child of God.